perfect game against the #1 seed from group stage. That's SKT's level right now.
저희 팀이 아직 우승하지 못한 대회가 MSI 하나밖에 없고 이번 MSI 결승은 꼭 우승할 것 같아요.
You know, David versus the Goliath. Are we going to be better than SKT? And I think we can do it, but again, it just depends on if we come there to play as a team.
IEM 우승과 롤챔스에서 딱 우승했을 때가 정말 뜻깊은 추억이었고 아마도 MSI에서도 우승하게 되면 그게 제일 좋은 추억이 될 것 같습니다.
And maybe they've been seen as the best team for so many years, but the only thing that matters is today, when we go up on that stage and we play, that we're the better team.
Counter Logic Gaming will face SK Telecom T1 with the mid-season Invitational Finals for both teams to get their chance at the championship win.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the League of Legends Mid-Season Invitational Finals, where only 2 contenders remain. Fans have packed the Oriental Sports Center to see which of these teams will bring home the MSI Championship. And earlier we got a look at some cosplayers as well as fans across the arena. SKT, of course, heading inside, and Faker leading the charge. Aframu and the rest of CLG looking to challenge our reigning world champions here on stage today in a best-of-5. And before we dive into the matchup at hand, we're going to head on stage with the LPL's Rendong to meet our finalists.
来到上海，你现在正在收看的是2016英雄联盟季中冠军赛的总决赛的比赛现场。今天的话呢，两支队伍将会最终在这个舞台上角逐出谁将捧起象征着荣耀的奖杯。今天首先我要介绍的队伍也是本次大赛表现非常出色，来自 LCK 赛区的王者，让我们欢迎的就是 SKT。
A team that has no unfamiliarity with being on a stage of this degree. The international stage and in the finals, more than comfortable operating in a best-of-5 is this squad.
接下来让我们介绍的就是大魔王中路 Faker。
Big support for Faker.
同样，本
as
次比赛
expected.
表现十分出色的下路 Ben。
Many eyes will be on him in the mid lane, but of course he has that supporting cast. Very stellar members behind him.
Yeah, Wolf is ready for Sona today.
The support battle will be very interesting today when you look at Wolf versus Aframu and Koma, of course, as we've mentioned many times, widely considered to be the best coach in the world when it comes to League of Legends, standing behind them on stage.
CLG.
And their challengers, actually the higher seed coming into this best-of-5, but many would consider them the underdogs in this battle.
Yeah, and if they have any hope today, Darshan really does have to step up in that top lane. You know, someone we've had eyes on all tournament long.
And they're stone cold. He's got to step up too. CLG always stone cold during intros.
Stixay, though, when you look at the rookies who has really stepped up, players are saying he's the best AD carry in the tournament.
And maybe the best support next to him as well. Afro has had a career tournament.
And really making a name for himself as a leader in this tournament. Aframu cementing his place in the, the annals of League of Legends history. And there it is, one last look at the MSI trophy, what these teams are battling for on top of regional pride and the ability to call themselves the best team in the world as of yet in this season. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm James Dash Patterson, anchoring the Analyst desk, where I'm joined by Mitch Crepo Vorspools, Jake Spawn Tiberi, and Joshua Jat Leesman. Gentlemen, we've made it to the final day of MSI, 2 whole weeks here in the Oriental Sports Center in Shanghai. It's been an incredible event so far.
Yeah, it certainly has been. And, teams showing up to play. I think everyone expected SKT to be one of the last teams standing, but CLG being able to make it to a date with them is definitely big news for the North American scene.
Yeah, and I'm really looking to see how well they can do against SKT, right? Because not many people are really expecting them to win other than CLG themselves because they're coming in with a lot of confidence, but I just want to see if they can maintain the level of play, keep up the champion picks they've been able to go for it, and just give them a great tournament.
Yeah, close games and maybe one game taken off SKT for me would already be a victory for North America here in this tournament, because CLG, they exceeded all expectations, and the biggest thing for me is that they managed to play two different styles and make both work, and that is something where a lot of critics in the past said CLG only split push team, but they showed actually the biggest mastery in some of these team fights.
Well, before we get into your gentlemen's expectations of this series today, let's take a look at our bracket and see the path these squads blaze to today's title fight. Korea's SK Telecom took down the #1 seed Royal Never Give Up in 4 games, really turning it on after a weak group stage performance. And in yesterday's semifinal, we saw North America's Counterlogic Gaming beat the LMS's Flash Wolves in 4 games as well. So let's focus in on that SKT series first.
Yeah, well, they lost the first game, so the 3-1 doesn't look as dominating on paper as it actually was watching the games. Faker stepped up in a huge way.
Yeah, the last game kind of counted double almost.
Yeah, the fact that Faker was going up against Xiaohu, someone that a lot of people had toted and was honestly in great form whilst Faker was kind of slumping, didn't really seem like it in the finals because Faker was on a whole new level.
Yeah, Faker on a whole new level, very comfortable, not greeting in situations where he can get punished, but really taking maximum seizing of that opportunity that was given in some of these ganks. You know, sometimes 1v1 kills, sometimes roams, he picks people off, aggressively flashing, but he seemed very aware of what his risks were, and he was just playing very smart.
And the team set him up for success. Like, when you look at a mid lane, during the group stages especially, teams were repetitively visiting Faker's lane, trying to keep him down, but the team rallied behind him. There were times when he had 3 pink wards on the top side of his lane. You know, he can play towards that river, he can play aggressively, on especially on something like a Fizz. So I think that whilst Faker was a person that really shone through in that series, it was an overall team effort that really led to it.
And Jat, we still, though, have to contrast the bracket stage SKT versus the group stage SKT because it was wildly different.
Exactly, and I think it did actually start with Faker just taking his play to the next level, and I think we underrate how much pressure Faker is under every single game because it is expected that he dominates his opponent on the world stage, which is insane that he's actually able to deliver this level of skill this consistently on the stage, and it's going to be really difficult for CLG to go up against.
Yeah, the first time Faker came out, that was just honestly impressive skill-wise, but the consistency that he has produced that with afterwards is honestly even more impressive, especially if you take into account what SKT's preferred play style is. Especially on bot lane, it is ultra safe. It is passive, it is not pushing for advantages, which means, yeah, they can't get ganked. But then junglers know that, and they look at Faker because Faker, the way he plays, he opens himself up for ganks and outplays. His biggest strength is even turning around ganks generally, but in week 1, it kind of failed.
Exactly, and because the bot lane plays so passive, they're actually expecting Faker to carry every single game, and they consistently do it.
Yeah, well, let's look at the man then who's tasked with dealing with Faker in this series, Huhi. I know we've had some criticisms towards him throughout this tournament. What do we expect out of him? What have we thought of him leading up to this series today?
Well, Huhi was really impressive yesterday, but in saying that, he got his best champion nearly every single game. The Rise is crucial for CLG right now, and Huhi sets up the 1-3-1 so well. His teleports have been on point, and he really is the team man. I mean, no individual glory for this whole CLG lineup is personified in their mid laner.
Yeah, exactly. When they made the switch from Pobelter to Huhi, they were saying how Huhi was a better team player, and they actually did say he was a little weaker mechanically than Pobelter in lane. And those things show. The number of missed Azir ultimates this guy's had is higher than anyone else in the tournament, but he plays very well around the team, and CLG has been making it work against superior mid laners.
Yeah, and at the same time, he is improving, though, because one of those missed Azir ultimates yesterday came from Maple himself, trying to force himself onto Huhi because Huhi was having such a large impact in the series. He will likely draw a straight ban on the Rise. I don't think he will get it for free, or SKT will have a clear answer ready.
All right, so I want to hammer this home one final time. When we turn to today's best of 5, the mid lane matchup is going to be huge. So now let's pit the two players against themselves, right? We've talked about Huhi in a vacuum and Faker in a vacuum, but how do they deal with each other?
I think a lot of this just comes down to jungle pressure as well as the champion matchups. The fact that CLG has blue side in all 5 games is a little bit daunting. It actually means they're throwing in the towel as far as this matchup goes and just letting Faker have his way because they figure Faker would be able to beat him with most champions. The KDA is actually very respectable for Huhi in those semifinals because he had some very good Rise games, but I feel like playing against Faker is a whole different beast.
His main job is to go even at best, and I think he did that well in the group stages against Faker in lane. Yes, it wasn't the best Faker, but Huhi was expected to be smashed way harder than he was ultimately in group stages, so maybe it won't be as bad as many people think, but I think that's one of the key matchups for this series.
Yeah, I certainly think so as well, and I also think it depends on his champion pool, because what he does on Rise, how he sets up the 1-3-1, how he takes the top laner generally, not the mid laner. I mean, he was matching up against MMD a lot against Flash Wolves, is really, really unique, and he has legitimate kill threat, so I expect them to get rid of that. Maybe he can mirror it with something like Alessandra or a Twisted Fate in this series, but I think it's what he does around the map, not in the laning phase, that will dictate whether who he is successful against SKT.
That series in particular, though, it was more so that they were playing, obviously, whenever the Rise came out, Azir was matched, and Azir has to stay in the mid lane in a 4-1, so we need to see if Hui can do the same thing in the side lane against Faker. But I think his biggest strength there was maintaining pressure safely while not getting caught out with limited vision, and that is generally independent of who you're playing against, but it just shows you great awareness. So that sense, we have to give him compliments too, because a lot of the work kind of goes unnoticed. It's like this invisible pressure, but he was always there, ready to cross map. Whenever Flash moves, we're like, okay, we're going mid now. Hui's like, you want to do that? I'll take that trade. I'll take your base. And Flash Wolves were kind of stuck on the map.
Now, this is not to say that the mid lane is the only place where this matchup can be won. I want to turn now to the bottom lane. Starting with Bang and Wolf, Crepo, you hit on this point a little bit earlier.
Yep.
The fact that SKT doesn't necessarily play for their bottom lane to win.
Sometimes they have matchups that go even, and where you can have like the war of attrition style, and then you can win it really hard if you keep pushing and you keep bending it until it breaks. However, that exposes you to ganks. And that is something Wolf and Bang kind of don't go for. They play back in lane, they play behind the neutral point, and they play the CS game.
Exactly, and CLG's bottom lane has been much more aggressive, whether they get jungle pressure to kill the turret early, or whether they just have Aphromoo roaming around more frequently. But the question here is actually going to be, because they play so passively, they're almost hoping you go aggressive a little bit. So maybe CLG just picks a scaling bottom lane and then takes it to the team fight phase.
Because let's get one thing straight. RNG wanted to kill Wolf and Bang over and over again. I mean, we saw the first Leona pick of the tournament come out against them, and they were able to absorb a lot of that pressure and actually make that part of the map a weakness for RNG, which is very hard to do against someone like Wush and Mata. So I think that CLG kind of have to scale against them, because it's already been proven that if you go aggressive, they punish you pretty hard.
Yeah, if you go aggressive, you need to synergize your ganks very well. We saw that in the RNG series. The aggression didn't come out together. It was one by one. And then obviously these passive sustain lanes do well. That's why we also see the rise here of these range supports. Think of a Karma. They're very good at slowly controlling the lane, but they're weak to ganks when they push, or dies when they're exposed. But if you never punish them that way, then obviously it becomes a game of picking the stronger range support, and that's why we're kind of going this downward spiral where we start with Soraka, the Karma comes out, the Sona comes out, because we're all just playing lanes 2v2 in a vacuum.
Very little room for error if CLG does decide to focus in on that bottom lane. Now let's jump to the top side of the map, Darshan versus Duke.
Yeah, this could be a tough matchup for Darshan, because Duke is a really good laning top laner. I mean, he gets to play against the likes of Someday Smeb in the LCK, and Darshan had a really rough set against MMD. I mean, he was killed a couple of times in the laning phase. His wave manipulation was just not good enough. He was pushing up continually on Echo, and I think that is something that Casa exposed and that Blank will look to replicate and get Duke ahead.
Yeah, I think Darshan's been fighting an uphill battle this entire event, because he was the last on the tank top train, and he's been playing the tank tops in every single game. But with that being said, when he does play up aggressively, he's been able to get minor 1v1 advantages. It's just he's so easily punished. So that's why I think this matchup does also come down to the jungle control in the river between Blank and Xmithy.
Yeah, and if we have to compare Blank and Xmithy versus the junglers they eliminated from the tournament, MLXD and Karsa, the biggest difference is that they don't seem to kind of plan out their ganks starting from level 1. We had a couple MLXD ganks at like 245. We yesterday had the Karsa gank at the start to hit the 3-minute mark in the top lane. Blank doesn't seem to mirror that style, so maybe that actually influences the top lane matchup where Darshan can play that aggressive style but won't necessarily get punished. Blank, for me, did not seem like a really good synergistic ganking jungler so far.
Yeah, he kind of goes on these solo missions where, like on Nidalee, for example, he'll go Wolves, Raptors into their blue buff, and that's great. Like, that is a really smart jungle pathing, and you can 3-buff people with it quite easily. It extends your blue buff because it's very hard to invade onto the top side of Nidalee's map, but at the same time, like, that's a solo thing. That's not getting anyone else ahead, whereas Karsa, you know, MLXG, they were very much impacting mid and top lane respectively. So I think that this is an area that, you know, Xmithy is a very controlled jungler. His positioning on the map after about 7 minutes is very, very good. But I want Blank to look to expose him a little bit earlier on.
Key point after 7 minutes, we forget that Nidalee getting caught out in the river yesterday.
I thought his Nidalee ideals were good. The way he pushed lane, he wasn't landing spears, but he's in the right place at the right time. I think it's one of the reasons Xmithy was such a great Udyr player, because he knows how to be in the right place, but sometimes the skill shot accuracy isn't quite there for him. If he does get going, he's had a few games this season where he's had the skill shot accuracy. He's a really dangerous jungler.
Yeah, these junglers that have the concepts down, but sometimes lack the execution. For example, yesterday, he was throwing out spears when Ryze could maybe walk up and snare. get that spear there, or he didn't wait for somebody to push the zone on the enemy to like kind of give you almost a guaranteed spear. If he can get that down this game, he has the concept down, the knowledge down to really take control of the game. So we need to see if that works today, because we need Xfinity to overperform to kind of balance out this game, because SKT just, as a team, looks stronger.
But in saying that, both these junglers seem to prefer Kindred right now. I know historically they have liked the Nidalee, and Xmithy's Kindred, for me, has been very good around the team fights. I mean, we saw Casa a little bit too quick on some ultimates yesterday and the like, but Xmithy is someone that you can rely on in those situations. So maybe they just deprioritize it completely and go towards Kindred Graves, look for the farming junglers, and just dominate the team fight aspect.
All right, well, gentlemen, cards are on the table now. I've heard plenty of information from you. Now I want to see how that swings your vote. Prediction time for this finals at MSI. Who's walking away with the title? Crepo, starting with you.
I mean, almost the obvious SKT. It's more of a question whether it's 3-0 or 3-1. I'm just going to go with the 3-0 to at least make it a little bold, so there's a chance of me being wrong.
All right.
I actually have grown to really respect this CLG lineup. In saying that, I just don't think they're ready for SKT in their current form against RNG. RNG was a team that looked fantastic in the group stages, so I echo similar sentiments. I think it's going to be a 3-0, but I do think that these games will be quite late because both teams play relatively slow.
Okay, Jat.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the SKT that went 6-4 in group stage, and then also the SKT that went 3-1 against RNG, and I think CLG can be just as good as those teams. I don't necessarily think, like, for sure, yeah, CLG's got this. I think it will be a 3-1. I think they can take a game because mentally it really felt like RNG was destroyed throughout the series, and I feel like CLG is a more mentally strong team. Okay. So they will have 4 shots to take a game against SKT, and I think they'll get one of them.
Yeah, right. I definitely agree with the mental aspect here, because generally the way SKT kind of dominate finals is it's a close game 1 that they end up winning. It's a less close game 2, but then they completely stomp you game 3. Look at IEM versus Fnatic, but CLG seem very resilient when it comes to mental fortitude, so maybe they have it in them to claw back in one of the games.
I was going to say, showcased by the number of comebacks they've had in just this tournament alone. Well, the gentlemen at the desk think SKT's got it in rather crushing fashion. It's time now to send it to the casters to get this series underway. As we go, we'll get a closer look at the reigning kings of the bot lane.
울프 선수가 이제 저랑 같이 한 지 거의 2-3년쯤 됐는데
10월에 나진에서 봤죠?
어떤 촬영장 같은 곳에서 봤는데
촬영장?
응.
그것까지 기억 안 나는데.
스튜디오 같은 그때는 좀 못했고
아무래도 그치 모르고
좀 시간 지나면서 좀 점점 실력이 조금씩 올라갔죠.
발전하고 아무래도 처음 데뷔했을 때는 잘 서로 뭐 어떻게 해야 되는지 잘 모르니까 네, 좀 못했죠.
솔직하게 일단은 배준식 뱅 선수는 처음부터 근데 되게 잘할 것 같았고 항상 커리어 좀 쌓기 전부터 되게 잘한다고 항상 소문 내고 다녔었습니다.
제가 워낙 오래 같이 해서 그런지 뭐 칭찬할 말이 딱히 없네요. 그냥 물론 제 주관적인 입장에서는 그냥 뭐 게임한 프로게이머네 싶은데 사람들은 또 세계 최고 선수라고 생각하니까.
Playing against them, it's always like it's one person because they just move so seamlessly together. It's either, okay, they're gonna go in or they're gonna back up. And it's never one of them makes this huge mistake and, you know, throws the other one off in the bottom lane. It's always like they're one. And I think that's pretty damn cool.
There's the first kill. Bang is dominating. He gets another kill. That's 2 for him. Hybrid's next up. Make that a third. A triple for the SKT AD carry.
울프 선수는 친구로서 좀 뭐 유쾌한 것도 있고 선수로서 뭐 솔직히 다 선수들은 이기려고 하고 열심히 하는데 그냥 좀 더 열심히 하는 그런 선수?
저랑 준식이랑 둘이서 굉장히 저희 팀의 약간 뭐랄까요? 분위기 메이커? 약간 그런 포지션을 맡고 있는데 재밌는 친구예요. 한번 화나면 좀 무섭긴 하지만
일단 뱅 선수와 울프 선수를 처음과 지금 비교하면은 생활 태도나 뭐 연습하는 연습량 이런 게 커리어 쌓기 전과 후가 너무 똑같아서 너무 고마운 선수들이에요.
I absolutely love hearing from the players, and we're going to see how they handle themselves against Stixxay and Aframu. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry, joined by Sam, Kobe, Hom, and Kev.